Thank you very much for being today with us. I'll just represent our guests for the audience. We have the head of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development in Kazakhstan, Agris Premanis. Then we have the head of the Greek Competitiveness Council, Simas Anastapopoulos. Then we have the chairman of the Malaysian agency MITE, Tajuddin Ali. And we have the ex-chairman and CEO of the Portuguese Stock Exchange, but now it's a vice rector of the university in Portugal, Miguel Marques. And we have the vice minister of the digital transformation, Ashat Orozbek, today. Thank you very much for finding your time and joining us on the panel. Today we have quite an interesting subject to discuss. It's a transformation in nations, what is done. It's quite an interesting, everyone, which of you brings quite a unique experiences to this panel to share. Tajuddin Ali, why don't I'll start with you? Because your country has a quite a unique experience. You have the prime minister who made a design for the country, but you mentioned yesterday this Asian tiger lost some teeth, and today it's a new reload of the agenda. How's actually, may you share your story on the Malaysia? What do you have? How is actually transformation of country? What is local Kazakh audience may learn from your experiences?
Thank you, Elder. I may bore some of the GFCC members because I may cover some of the things that I said yesterday. But I think in the interest of the local participants, I think some of the key points have got to come out. First, maybe I do what the chairman of GFCC does on many occasions. He takes a survey. The first survey I want to show is that anyone here who has never been to Malaysia? Quite a lot around the back. Understandable? Anyone here who have heard of Malaysia? Everybody, I hope. But it reminds me, because it's very interesting, when I ask my people in Malaysia about Kazakhstan, they say somewhere in there, around there, where there are so many stands there, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, so they're not sure where exactly it is. And you have to be here to know what Kazakhstan is about, and especially Nur Sultan. When I came here 2 years ago, it was known as Astana. I still call it Astana, but now it's Nur Sultan. Anyway, as mentioned by the chairman, Malaysia went through a transformation. It's been ruled, we became independent in 1957, ruled by the same party for over 60 years. But certain things happened towards the end of that 60 years that resulted in the people, through our general election, throwing away the old government and bringing in a new opposition to become the government. And that caused a lot of dislocation. In this case, political, administrative, everything. That is a new ball game altogether. Who led this change? It was the man who led Malaysia into that country that many people know among the Asian tigers, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, who decided to step down. He decided to step down in 2003. And when first assisting the new government, but then towards the end, he became restless, and he led an opposition, and it was him that fused together the opposition that led to the overthrowing of the old government to now he's leading the new government. So he has come back. There are many things that he has done that well, most of us also feel that went off track. For example, he created the new federal capital, Putrajaya, which I know that during the early days, the former president of Kazakhstan visited Malaysia many times and had discussions and looked at how Putrajaya developed and maybe became the many things that you see around here as a conceptual, you know. And of course, Nur Sultan has his own agenda and so on. But there were things that I see that were based on what is there in Putrajaya in Malaysia as our new federal capital. The other thing is on the economic, we went up from agriculture-based company through industrialization to a more knowledge-based economy. But then in the early 2000s, things begin to slow down and went down. And now trying to pick up all that together. So it is truly a nation in transformation, that trying to bring back, to infuse back the energy that was there in the 80s and 90s, and to try to build back in a current landscape of competitiveness where there are our neighbors, Indonesia in particular. We produce approximately the same kind of products, but Indonesia is 10 times bigger. For every one Malaysian, there are 10 Indonesian. For every square mile of land in Malaysia, there's 10 times the square size in Indonesia. So market-wise, it's bigger. But we produce the same palm oil, you know. So they are more competitive in the sense that maybe we have an edge at the beginning, but they are now closing that gap. So for Malaysia now to compete with our neighbors even, let alone the world at large, we really have to find new elements of competition. And this is a challenge of this new administration that we have. Unfortunately, it is made up of people who have no experience in government, because for 60 years it's another group, as it were. Now it's a completely new group taking over, of course, led by the man who has got all the experience, but he's now 94 years old. And so we know that his speed and agility is not as when he was 20 years younger. I am 23 years younger than him. So I cannot say that I'm tired, because if I have a prime minister who's 93 working very hard. So still, I have survived because I worked during his time before, went through 2 other prime ministers, now I'm back. We at MITE, now he has agreed to come back as a patron of MITE. MITE is a platform between government and industry. We are a not-for-profit company limited by guarantee. We try to do work that is serving the industry and bringing in government in order to facilitate between the two. So that briefly is as an introduction. Thank you.
Then, Tajuddin, what is the perfect age for the leader of the country? What is your...
He says that the retirement
not
age...
too young, and one is actually, it's not too late.
He says that the retirement age in Malaysia has now been brought up to 95.
Okay, quite interesting. But you have it's a more domestic agenda today you're battling on. Seamus, maybe I'll just turn to you, just bring into picture Greece, because your relationship with European Union was a bit painful. And maybe you'll just tell your story on transformation with the external factors in the game.
Thank you. Thank you, Elder. It's a great pleasure to be here in this conference among you and in this exciting city. There are 2 major challenges today that everybody faces: globalization and the increasing inequalities because of it, and the digital age, which is approaching fast. Actually, it's already here, digitization and the Internet of Things. Well, I'm telling you today a different story. What happens when you don't adapt in time, when you don't recognize the challenges, and when you stay behind. Greece is a country that's very rich in history and in heritage, very rich in culture, with a very important human capital, and with significant resources. Greece is a country that joined the European Union in the early 80s and joined the Euro before 2000. So why does a country that has everything going for it, which has all the opportunities there, the conditions are right, how do you end up in the need of financial support, the biggest financial package ever to a country from the institutions? And this is slightly different story. This is what happens, and then suddenly you have to adapt by necessity. You have to transform by necessity. And Greece did that. We just got out of the financial package of this recession last year, and we have a new government today that is pro-reform, pro-change. The country exhausted itself during these last 10 years trying to introduce all the fiscal reforms that were necessary to adapt its economy, to reach a financial equilibrium, a financial balance. We haven't done the reforms for change, for growth, though, and this is the next challenge that is presented for our country. And this is, of course, a job that we at the Council of Competitiveness of Greece intend to do in assisting our government to reach the next level of transformation that is necessary for sustainable growth.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Simas. Then it's a view from the private sector, view from Competitiveness Council, maybe a bit different from the view of the development institution. And Agris, may I just turn to you? You're representing here the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. You have so much on your agenda, on your plate, and all the countries sometimes complain for the uneasy task they have to perform. May you share your view on the transformation? What is transformation for you as a development institution?
No, thank you, Eldar, and pleasure to be here. When I think about unique experiences, and one of the questions you always ask, unique experiences, it's actually the last 4 or 5 years here in Kazakhstan have been quite unique. And I think it's such a wonderful case study for what Competitiveness Council should look at. This is exactly the country that's a kind of middle-income country, not obvious anchors for growth. And really, the key questions I think we're asking ourselves here are the questions that where we ended Malaysian story. Yeah, so Malaysia now is looking for new drivers of competitiveness. And in Kazakhstan, really what we have, and I'll start with Kazakhstan before I go very briefly broader, is that the country has collected all low-hanging fruit. The country has done the horizontal reforms, structural reforms are needed. The business environment is quite good. But then where does the growth comes from? And in a country like Greece, you would have had anchor like EU to aim at, Malaysia, some bigger markets next door. Just hold the thought where the Kazakhstan is. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's now in a wonderful location with a big Chinese market next door, the European markets as well. But where does the competitiveness come from, and what should what competitiveness factors should the government and private sector focus on? And to me, this is, for Kazakhstan and for many other countries where EBRD works, is absolutely the key question. Is that once you've done your horizontal reforms, how do you choose, and particularly how does government together with private sector chooses where does the growth going to come from? Okay, so there are very kind of general themes. I think there was exciting, very excellent presentation this morning about skills. But even in that sphere, you need to think about where to focus on. And I think in Kazakhstan, okay, there needs to be a lot of investment in technology, in digital, and there will be vice ministers speaking later on. But how do you choose the right direction for that? Ultimately, you can end up with very significant stranded assets, be technology or stranded skills, if you like, as well, if you're too focused on what you do. And this is very much, if I can broaden out now, I mean, EBRD works in across more than 30 countries, ranging from reasonably developed countries in Eastern Europe, like Poland, Baltics, where the venture capital innovation is at the forefront, to countries like Kazakhstan, and then further down the line, countries like Kyrgyz Republic next door. And in each of them, we can adopt quite unique skills. We focus on these vertical issues, but ultimately, in each of them, you need to look for these key competitiveness drivers. And if countries have anchors, like in countries that are close to EU or EU member countries, it's very easy. When you get a country like Kazakhstan, I'm always struggling, and there are a lot of discussions. Eldar is one of the key parts of these discussions. How do we define where the country should go? And on one hand, the country has money to implement various new programs. The country has, okay, there's always a fallback in terms of oil and natural resources sectors, but then it can choose where it goes in terms of other areas. There's general statement of improving export, but it's not obvious where does the country focus on when they think about improving exports. And I've asked more questions than answered, but this is really, I think, what also EBRD, from our experience of mixing state and private, goes to. One thing I will share to you, I think those of you who know Eldar, you'll know that he has a natural aversion to anything to do with state. I think he was sitting here in the first panel looking at the first Vice Prime Minister, the Executive Secretary of First President's administration, the Hakim of Nur-Sultan, and probably deep inside grinning that he wants to see more private sector. But I think it's always this mix of private and public which is so critical to resolving these issues.
Yeah. But coming back, thank you, Agris, for the pleasant and good words, but coming back as a development institution, do you have some kind of criteria when you consider the nation needs transformation? Do you somehow define or somehow is actually discuss and then saying like Greece needs transformation or Malaysia needs transformation? When is actually you have the red flags?
Yeah, so for those of you who are not perhaps familiar with EBRD, it was established in the early 90s after the fall of Soviet Union. And the whole DNA of the bank is that we invest significant amounts of money, but then it comes with reforms. But it's not the painful IMF experience. We do it bottom up. We look at the areas where investment is required and reforms are required. To answer your question, Eldar, for each country, we would look at 6 qualities of sustainable development. And these are, the country needs to be well-governed, integrated, competitive, green, and inclusive. I always miss one, but anyway, so that's, it gives you a sense of where we're heading. And for each country, we have a sense of what's missing, and then we really focus our efforts on the missing parts. Right in sort of mid-2000s, there was a big debate about countries that graduate from what EBRD does. If country is already well developed, and it just so happened that the Czech Republic was the only one that graduated, and then the Russian crisis happened, and then nobody else wants to graduate, because ultimately what we have understood that even in the most developed countries where we work in, this would be Baltics and Poland in particular, there's always a niche where we can add value with our model. And our model is that we invest significant amount of money. In Kazakhstan, we have invested more than $9 billion so far, but also we work very closely with the government on these vertical reforms.
Simas wants to
Just
add.
a quick comment here so that we make it a little more lively. When an organization like EBRD or the IMF recognize that it is time for a country to transform, it's already late.
We actually entered Greece as our country operation about 4 years ago, which is perceived indeed as a signal. But again, I think even in Greece we see the role that looking at banking sector, for instance, where we can add value with our tools, which are very much a bottom-up tools, working with financial institutions and together with them then progressing, rather than top-down IMF tools, which are also useful, but I think they're complementary.
Thank you, thank you. Miguel, may I just turn to you? You represent quite a unique country, Portugal. Portugal, we're in discussion when is actually country reached the stage when it needs transformation. Portugal has a unique history of, today it's Brazil, it's considered to be centrum of the Portuguese-speaking population, and Portugal is becoming the little brother of Brazil. At least it's a perception what we have. Share your story. How's actually, where you see the transformation? What is on your agenda?
Hello? Okay. Thank you. Eldar, first let me say how glad I am for our Kazakh audience, how happy I am to be in this country. Not only because it is satisfying my curiosity, and I am for the first time in this part of the world, but also professionally I've always had the willingness to visit this country and some other in Central Asia, because apart from my university responsibilities, I also have I also work in the oil and gas industry. I serve as vice chairman of Galp Energia, which is an oil and gas company, a multinational company based in Portugal, with exploration and production mainly in Brazil, in the pre-salt fields, and in Africa. And this region is unavoidable to understand the geopolitics of oil, which is something which is of interest to me. Apart from this, I'm very glad to be part of this GFCC incredible, amazing meeting. Responding directly to your point, Eldar, yes, Portugal is part of a Portuguese-speaking community, which gives some sense of identity to many different areas of the world. We are in Portugal barely 11 million, but there is a Portuguese-speaking community in the world which reaches 250 million speakers as mother tongue. And this positions Portugal beyond its natural geographic position, which is Europe, and a member of the European Union, a member of the Euro. So Portugal is linked to Europe. Portugal is part of the European Union. But what we can bring into the European Union, what we can differentiate ourselves, adding value to the European Union, to the benefit of Europe as well, is our links with the world, and especially with the Portuguese-speaking world. Yes, Brazil is a juggernaut for its size, but Brazil has its own identity, has its own problems. It's in South America. But the links between Europe and South America are very important for the development of both regions. The European Union is about to sign an agreement which took a decade to negotiate, which is a free trade agreement between Mercosur and the European Union. And the role of Portugal and Brazil in bringing this agreement into force has been noticeable. So I think that these links are to the benefit of everyone, and it is the way transformation of society is done, is through engaging one another in projects, and it is in collaborating in international networks. So we do it at individual level, we do it at corporate level, and countries do it at national level.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe I'll turn to Ashat now. Ashat is representing the ministry which is responsible for digital transformation. And digital agenda is a key agenda in Kazakhstan. And yesterday, Ashat, we shared the experiences of government for citizens. And it's people are, I mean, our members are quite impressed with the achievement. And may you share your view, how you see the digital transformation? Why is actually you're bringing it, this topic? How is actually it's important? What is on your agenda?
Thank you. My Russian is more better than English, so let me speak Russian.
Kazakhstan, in fact, of transformation, and in the sphere of introduction of digital transformation, from my point of view, has done a lot of work. If you look at the last 15 years, and if you look retrospectively, if you look at getting some document certificate, would take in some cases 2 weeks to obtain certain certificates and something. Now we provide 470 different kinds of services in the e-government portal, and it takes maybe less than 1 minute to get certain documents. We today discussed that today we have already had a lot of success and victories, but so much work has been be done in the area of the infrastructure development, in the community development. There are companies, developers who create new products without the government involvement. If the government in the past was the major driver, still we have some tendencies like that. But now we see that many companies started to develop not only at the cost of the governmental support and funds, but they started to develop in the market on their own, and even they get access to the export opportunities. And the work which we have done, of course, we can talk about it so much. But now I want to say that, in fact, we do have certain natural limitations which do exist for development of any technologies, including digital technologies. And if you look deeply in the issue, we studied biology in our childhood, and we know that in development of any species, there would be two stages: mutation and adaptation. And Kazakhstan went through the process of adaptation in digital technologies. It has done it in the second stage, is mutation, when we transfer to the long-going transforming sphere, which is related to development of human capital. Without this element, it's practically impossible to move forward. And nowadays we understand that any technology, for technologies to develop, we need that the environment that is available should be adaptive to technology, self-learning, like any system. And that is why I think that the key moment for development of digital technologies in Kazakhstan would be linked and depending on the system of education. So the element of digital education should be in all spheres, starting in healthcare, ending with agriculture, because digitalization will come and penetrate to all sectors of our economy, which is visible as of today. Ministry deals with introduction of digital technologies in different areas, like digital mine, in agriculture, digital agriculture, which we do every day. But most of all, it's important that people should be adaptive to technologies which come today. Today we are introducing some technologies. In 10 years, it will be understandable that these technologies are absolute and new technologies would come. And this changeability requires adaptivity of the population and of business in order to be promptly moving and in the flow of development of the whole civilization.
The Kazakh government was involved in developing the readiness of the fourth industrial revolution. May you share some your findings on your research, on your projects you have done?
As for the introduction of the technologies in industry, it's a big issue, which is mostly related to the fact that industry requires new approaches, innovations, introduction of the scientific and new solutions. But for it, we have the Astana IT Hub. Within the short period of time that it exists, it's attracted around 1 billion. And we do have our development institutions, but we are glad with the fact that enterprises themselves are interacting with the government in terms of attracting new technologies. And we act as a technological partner via our development institutes. And we know that introduction of such technologies goes in mining sector, in oils sector, and that is why the government mostly helps them. And our role is to attract technologies here, and there is a role in ensuring grants for research to the sectors where we don't have big business, but we do have the perspective opportunities for SMEs development. And that is why the government should play here the major role to provide grants to the technologies which enable these enterprises to make a breakthrough.
To you.
Well, not just him. I don't want to take away your moderating function here, but I was very glad to hear that finally we got to digitalization and technology, because we had pretty much the entire panel speak about transformation without mentioning it. One thing that strikes me when you think about digitalization in private sector, but then particularly in some of the government processes, is what should come first? Whether first you should actually improve the institutions and sort out the processes, the procedures, and then digitalize it, or you can digitalize bad processes. And I have to say, probably 5-6 years ago, if you asked me this question, I would say first you sort everything out and then you digitalize. Now I've completely changed my mind on that. And I'd be very interested to hear an experience of some of the panelists here, Askat, and of course all the others as well.
Who would like to share the experiences and opinions?
Well, actually, Greece is a very good example of what happens to a country that has weak institutions there. And we all came to realize in these last years how important strong institutions are for the development of the countries, for sustainable growth. Greece found itself in the position that we couldn't change. We couldn't recognize why we had to change, and we didn't have the institutions to protect us from the populism and the inability to realize what is happening in the economy and in the society. And I understand the point there, and this is a lesson learned in our case in the most severe way.
Yeah, but can you... Oh, that sounds very good. You have to build institutions. But can you use actually digitalization as a tool to help improve the institutions, the quality of institutions, anything from tax collection to how the education system works to anything else?
Indeed, corruption is a major thing in most of the economies, and transparency is the other thing. And digitalization, especially if you digitize, if you change the processes and the procedures, rather than digitalize what you already have, is a major improvement there. Brings transparency, first of all. In addition to the speed of doing business and everything else that becomes more clear to the public, to the society, but to the public administration itself at the same time. So yes, it is a major improvement and an absolute necessity today.
Touch.
If I may, there are so many facets to transformation. Digitalization is front end as well as back end. I'll explain that, what I mean. But as we discussed, as we all know, to me, transformation is a holistic approach. It has to come from many components. Yeah? At MIT, we have developed a framework. We call it FIRST. F-I-R-S-T. First is about finance. First, the F. And I can go into detail, but I, about putting in the infrastructure, both physical as well as institutional, because there are certain institutional infrastructure that has got to be adjusted and to be put in place in order to adjust to the new reality. Of course, physical, including fiber optics and other things, that has to be also put in place. Our regulations needs to be adjusted to take account of the new realities. That you do not want our regulations to inhibit, for example, investors coming in. You have to look at how to facilitate, to make it faster. Of course, technology comes into as a means to that end. FRS, S, skills and talent. You need to train people, retrain. Dr. Margareta earlier spoke about that. I think is, that tells everything about the challenges that need to be addressed in this. T is the last one, technology. Yes, you have to embrace technology, see how that can be adapted to the thing that you want to do. So whether it is nations or organizations, you have to address these issues holistically, because each intertwines and interfaces with the others, and it will affect. Because you're talking about the people that needs to be there. We are dealing with people. They have jobs. We cannot now tell them to do something. We have to reskill them, address this, to have training programs and so on. But it cannot be done overnight. So these adjustments, so to me, transformation is a means to an end. The end is we want to get to somewhere that we want to be better. And to convince everybody, to bring everybody on board that this is what we need to do, and we all need to do in order to move from where we are to where we want to be. And for that, you need that leadership. The political leadership is essential. And Alhamdulillah, Malaysia, at this point, we hope his health stays good. Yeah. But I see the same thing happening in Kazakhstan. I wish I am in Kazakhstan. I wish I'm 20 years younger. Yeah, I've seen this transformation.
I understand it up to 95, you still have some time.
Thank you.
Elder, if I may add one more point to complete the picture. After the recent elections in Greece, the new Prime Minister has appointed a Minister for Digital Transformation, and the key there is transparency, but he also appointed a Deputy Minister who is responsible, whose title is Minister for the Simplification of Procedures. I think this must be unique, but you understand what happens 1 year late. You have to do something urgent.
Okay, thank you, Miguel.
Well, to answer straight on your question, I would mention in the case of Portugal, the efforts that have been done over the years in terms of simplifying administrative procedures. And today, the depth of e-government in Portugal is very high. And it's considered a case study. It all started about 20 years ago with offering a concept called the Citizen's Store, the Citizen Shop, where all the different departments of government issuing documents, passports, identity cards, you name it, were concentrated in shops across cities. And that was the very start of the digitalization of the services. So today you still have the citizen stores, but they are not opening new stores anymore because the store is in your pocket. You can perform all operations from your mobile phone. You can ask for a passport. You can pay your bills even you can pay your taxes out of ATMs. Or out of a transfer from your bank account into a department, to a governmental store. So e-government and simplification is a major objective, and it is something that has an accumulation of experience for the past, let's say, decade, as far as internet-based simplification is concerned. But if I may, let me bring this discussion, and using now my hat, my university hat, let me move upstream in terms of digital skills, because if we talk about digitalization and how the world is moving, we have to prepare the youngsters today for the future to come. So, you know, education, universities have to think very thoroughly what they should do in order to prepare people for future jobs. It's not only about digitalization. Digitalization is generational, right? You know, we marketeers talk about the so-called traditionalists, those that were born before the Second World War. Then came the baby boomers, born between the Second World War and the late 60s. Then came the Generation X. Then came the millennials. We are living now through the millennials that are reaching the job market. And we're talking about now the future generation, which is called Generation Z. Zs, millennials, X generations, they all have digital skills. They don't have to be taught because people they were raised with digital skills. But it's the duty of the university and higher education to orient those skills into the requirements of future jobs. And the requirement of future jobs is based on not only digitalization skills, digital skills, but entrepreneurial skills. It's based on capacity to be flexible as a professional. It's based on being able to respond on work on demand. So there will be a lot of new requirements for future jobs, and this links with the presentation from Margareta that preceded this panel. It is a very, very rich area of thought within universities, how to prepare ourselves, how to prepare the educational system into future jobs, and how to be able to link the needs of the future societies with what universities today are able to offer in order to prepare the citizens of tomorrow. But that's a discussion in itself.
Yeah, thank you, Miguel. But when we discuss, it's for me as a businessman, it looks like too much emphasis on the means, how we'll reach. Maybe I'll just come back to the point of transformation, because I'll just bring the transformation which is needed for such a digitally advanced company like Facebook today. You have all the digital power there, you have the highly skilled and all the brain. But today it looks like they have the weapons of mass destruction, and it looks like they don't understand who may use this weapon of mass destruction. Agris, may I just turn to you, saying like you have the agenda, digital first, and then all agenda second. We have the case. How's actually case of Facebook? You have a very advanced company. Because for me as a business person, saying like digital skills, it's okay for universities to do, but it's very reachable. I'm just saying for me, it's a certain priority. I have the time frame saying like 5 to 7 years, I'll educate my people. I'll just bring the best. I'll just train the trainer. I have clearly, it's there. It's not an issue for me. But the point is transformation today, it looks like even reaching to this digital stage, we are now facing that we have the digitally advanced company which need transformation. And Agris, I'm just turning to you. It's more abstract discussion, but given that you raised the point, what would be your view on that?
Yes, I'm lost for words. How does Facebook transform?
Does Facebook need transformation, internal transformation?
I think first of all, this is one of those companies that, of course, it has driven very much the transformation around it. But I think we are probably reaching the stage when things happening around it will start driving transformation within Facebook. It's both in terms of the new models, new business models emerging on the Facebook platform. It's also the way regulators, again, I know you don't want to kind of move in that direction, but the way regulators will start looking at the way Facebook operates and so on. So all the external factors, and Facebook will have to become much more adaptable. I think to date, it had a very clear vision where it wanted to move. But much more and more is going to have to be adapting to what's happening around it, to various challenges it faces as a global company. Soon as it moves into the financial services, it will start facing completely new set of challenges. Yeah, I think the kind of regulation they haven't seen, they haven't thought about. It's all very good to operate in so far unregulated space. When they start using payment services and they start facing regulators and much more scrutiny from states, from China and so on. So I think the company will have to start adapting and becoming much more corporate citizen. How do they do it within? I think there's going to be much more emphasis on changing skill set within the senior management of the company.
Agris, that's why my point is that we're coming to the end of our panel discussion, and I would like to have a few questions from the audience. But it's what we discuss in the goal of the transformation, when we discuss, it looks like, for me, it's a building certain capabilities or certain capacities, but what would be, I would like to ask all the members of the panel to share, what should be number one goal of transformation? Who want to volunteer, Agris?
I'll say straight away, education.
Education.
You cannot transform a society without a total commitment with education. Development is linked with education, not only literacy, but capacity to anticipate the needs. And so I have no doubts on this. First priority, education.
Well, digital transformation especially is different things to different people and businesses. It's not the same in Facebook as it is in our company, for example. We are pharmaceutical manufacturers. We are a 100-year-old company, and we need to automate, we need to adapt. Compliance for us is a major issue, for example. So we need to automate procedures to remain, to be competitive, and to have a future.
Thank you.
I just repeat what I just said earlier. The transformation is a means to an end. It is about moving from where we are to where we want to be, where it's something better, in all, whatever that we wish.
What is for Malaysia number one goal today? What is the end result should be of transformation?
To be back among the Asian tigers.
Among the Asian tigers?
Yeah.
Okay. Askat, what would be your...
Well, in my view, transformation, in principle, it is an integral part of evolution. Transformation is an integral part of evolution. Talking about digital transformation, digital technology, it is a tool which enables the evolutionary processes to have them computerized, making them computer-aided. And I think that the first thing that we need to do in transformation, including that of digital and transformation of society, is to develop human capital, education, training, starting from the early childhood, like first, second grades. And as it was said before, generations of millennials, they are already growing with the skills. We as a government need to reshape and start doing something in this favor. As a government agencies, we are doing something, we are doing our job. You were referring to industries. We have 5 vice ministers on digitalization in these industries, which try to affect the digitalization of industry. But without human capital, you cannot move anywhere. Just only automation, the current processes, it's automation of chaos, automated chaos eventually.
Yeah, it's one of those questions like relativity theory. It depends on perspective. Ultimately, it's about well-being of people. But I think if you think from perspective, we're sitting here in Kazakhstan, so we have to end on something like this. To me, it's about high-quality growth and inclusiveness.
Okay, thank you, thank you. May I summarize that, just taking my role as a moderator. Looks like we're discussing the transformation, and we're saying that, seeing that the digital agenda, digital transformation, it's quite a catalyst for the change, and it's helping to move forward very quickly. But most of our panel agree that the end result of transformation should be, like we discussed yesterday, human enhancement. That is. May I just close with this statement, our panel, and to open the floor for 2 questions? Yeah, because we're running. У нас есть время.
We have time for 2 questions only. I would like to address the audience. If you have any questions, please, you can raise your hand.
On the questions, please raise your hand if you have the question. But my question would be, now is we're talking about the human enhancement, AI. It's like all the competition, humans against humans, very soon maybe change. And today we're in discussion that not the countries with the nuclear weapons, but the countries with the artificial intelligence, and that is a differentiator. I mean, in the game. How's actually AI? Is it a threat, or it's I mean, it's a new, I think it's Alexander Idrisov yesterday told that it's everything will be solved with the AI in the game. Is it something a problem solver or problem creator? I don't know. I'll give floor for the question. Do you want to answer or?
No, I want to ask a question.
Yeah, just wait, please. Yeah, please. On the AI.
Well, artificial intelligence is what everybody expects. Somebody has to develop it, of course, and somebody has to work on it. So it requires also, AI will require new skills. It is our job, it's the job of the education, the job of the enlightened leaders to make the necessary changes, the necessary reforms so that we reach that point where AI will be useful for society and useful in practice, I mean. We don't expect AI to run everything. We are going to run AI. So it's not a threat, it's an opportunity there, and this is how we should look at it.
I would like just to raise the point of the ethics of artificial intelligence. We have to think about it. We should really be able to control some derailing, unethical derailing that may happen in the development, scientific development and technological development. We have to be very, very attentive about cybersecurity. Indeed, cybersecurity is a new department of armed forces. You have the army, you have the navy, you have the air side, and now you have cybersecurity. And I believe that robotics, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence make a package that it's going to be exciting for the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just on one aspect, I think what fascinates me is how do you teach artificial intelligence? And really, depending on how you teach artificial intelligence, you can get very different outcomes. I remember in some of the conferences, people talking about gender biases in recruitment and saying, no, artificial intelligence will not have these gender biases. Well, in reality, it really depends on what data you're going to put in. So I think the aspect of how to teach artificial intelligence should be a key part of this. But also I think the responses on this panel, I think what represent is that there certainly needs to be, as we realize that this is truth, what you said, and there needs to be much more and much better understanding of how this is going to affect the world. I don't think it's there. I think this is the next 5 years when should be one of the key areas for the everybody involved to start, explore and explain to people what will happen.
But I think what we learn from the history and from our, let's say, business leaders, the history loves dropouts. And from that point of view, is it a lesson from AI how to teach? Either it will be a dropout AI or someone, we'll see. And we have one more question. Roberto, we need transformation decoder now, not only competitiveness decoder. Yeah. Okay, who wants on the panel? What is the measurement of transformation? How is actually to measure and criteria for transformation? Just to understand if it's good transformation, bad or ugly.
I think that's the skill that is required from a transformation agent. Any manager, every manager has to this duty of transform, let's say, at the corporate level, the company, but at the same time to make it a coherent system. As you say, the danger is to go too far, too fast, and provoke chaos, disorder. So this kind of, at the same time, unleash and harness, it's part of the skills to have successful but controlled transformation, I believe.
For me, learning from experience, the experience that we went through, the essence to good transformation is enlightened leadership. At the national level, even at the company level, it will be the same. But even if it is to be a dictator, it has to be a benevolent dictator who thinks about the nation, not himself. Then the people will follow. Because the lesson learned from Malaysia is that finally, for which I'm very happy, finally, the true power is in the hands of the people. The ballot boxes actually change. To hopefully now, we will be given a second attempt to get onto the right course towards where we want to be.
Okay, Seamus.
We need to come to an end, so I will be quick. By education, I'm an engineer, so I'll give you the simple answer. Bad or good transformation, the future will tell us if it was good or bad. But we have the knowledge base today, we have the talent, and we have good and bad examples to guide us. So, and of course, good organizations like GFCC to give us the guidelines.
It looks like JFCC is taken to the task and will be thinking about the decoding this transformation. I would like to now, Ashat wants to end.
Well,
Of good transformation is a strategy, first one. Second one, a good professional team. And third one is resource management. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much, our panelists. I would like audience to join in thanking our audience on the panel. Thank you very much for us.